website and share the slides in an email that we'll send out summarizing our sessions at the end of the week. Please stay on mute if you are not speaking. This will help us minimize any background noise distraction. You can ask questions in the chat or live using the raise hand function at any point during the session. And finally, if you need closed captioning, please go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, select more, then caption settings, and then select show captions. So what are we doing here this morning? The following is our agenda. So first we're going to give a little bit of information about who's in the room, both those of us who are presenting and those of us who are listening. We're going to give an overview of the ARPA Cambridge Nonprofit Recovery Fund, which is really what brings us all here today. I'm going to introduce Conduit Government Relations, who is the technical assistance provider on the grant. And then Scott from Conduit will be walking you all through the details. This includes the application process and a bit about the timeline, as well as eligibility requirements and documentation, and then show some examples of what this could look like. And then at the end, we'll have even more time for question and answers. So who are we? My name is Elena Sokolow-Kaufman. I am the executive director at the Cambridge Nonprofit Coalition. CNC's mission is to advance equity and justice in Cambridge through strengthening the nonprofit sector, building collective voice, and promoting collaboration. We represent over 75 Cambridge nonprofits, with missions ranging from early childhood education to affordable housing production, arts and culture, environmental preservation, and a lot more. And we are very excited to be here today, kicking off this session after months of advocacy to dedicate ARPA dollars for a recovery fund for Cambridge nonprofits. We're joined on this call by Scott Carter and his team at Conduit Government Relations. They helped us with the program's design, they helped us with our advocacy, and they will be providing technical assistance on the grant and conducting the application review. And we're also very glad to have a few representatives from the city of Cambridge on this call as well. We have been meeting with members of the finance team and the IT team weekly since the fall. So Jim Monagle and Paul Creedon, thank you both for being here today at this very important milestone for us. So now it is time for us to get to know you a little bit. In these meetings, I find it is very useful and helpful to understand a bit about who is in the room, since we are all zooming in from different places. So I'm going to launch a short poll. After I have, a critical mass of responses, I'll close them and share them. So hold on just a moment. All right, poll is launched, so please answer the questions. All right, 2 in. Right, there we go. All right, just over half. Give folks like 10 more seconds. Okay, I think this is mostly everyone here. So I'm going to end the poll, share the results. Most of us are representing nonprofits located in Cambridge. A lot of executive directors and development folks, as well as some programming folks, and one person working in operations. And again, another mix of experience with federal grants. About half have some experience, and then the other half a split between very experienced and having no experience with federal grants. And then how familiar are you with this fund that we're about to talk about? And again, a good mix of people. So some very familiar, which is great, some somewhat familiar, and a few that are, for whom all of this information is new. So wherever you are coming from, whatever work you do, whatever your experience has been with federal grants or with this fund to date, we are really glad to have you here. So I want to give a little bit of an overview of what this fund is all about. So by way of a little information, ARPA, or the American Rescue Plan Act, is federal aid that's provided to states and municipalities to respond to the public health and economic impacts of the pandemic. Our fund that we're talking about is the Cambridge Nonprofit Recovery Fund. It is a grant program that will be administered by the city of Cambridge with its ARPA dollars. The goal is to address the negative economic impacts and increased operating costs of the pandemic on the nonprofit sector. Through all of the advocacy that we all did collectively, there is $6 million that is dedicated to this fund, and grants of up to $150,000 will be made available for a wide range of Cambridge organizations based on the availability of funds and the ability to demonstrate loss. Oops, sorry. I do want to spend a little bit of time, reminding folks how we got here. So I'm going to take you a little bit back in time to provide some context as to why we decided on this particular approach, because it is a bit different than how a lot of other, municipalities and states are, administering and using these funds. And, as most things with the Cambridge Nonprofit Coalition, it all started with a survey. We started with reaching out and collecting information, in this case, about the economic impact of the pandemic on Cambridge nonprofits. And what we saw in the data, was really widespread impact, widespread negative economic impact on revenues, on expenses, across organizations doing vastly different things of different sizes. And it cut across way more domains than I think we had expected, as well as very, very much depleted staff capacity, I think, as a result of the economic impact. So when we were thinking about how can we utilize ARPA funds to best support the needs of the sector writ large, we wanted to have a program that many different types of organizations could access. And also we wanted to be sure to build in measures to ensure access to those funds was really equitable. And so you'll see as we walk through this, that those features really do exist in this program. So the first thing to note is that we made the choice to focus on economic costs and increased operating costs rather than a specific project or program or set of services. What this means is that many different types of organizations will be able to apply and be eligible for this funding. It also means that reporting requirements are much more limited, which is a definite advantage when you have real staff capacity issues. And we built in support for applicants. So we've engaged Conduit Government Relations led by Scott Carter, who is on this call and will be leading the rest of this discussion, to make sure that folks had the support they needed as they go through the application process. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce Scott, our technical assistance provider, to walk you through the rest of the details of the program. Scott.
Thank you so much, Elena. And first off, as always, let me just thank everybody for getting up at 8:30 in the morning to talk about grants. I know it can be a little bit tough to start your day in an hour and a half presentation, PowerPoint, talking about grants and things you might not be familiar with at this point in time. But so we are very grateful for your time, first and foremost, and your interest. We do hope everybody applies, and we're going to do our darndest to answer every single question we get today. Won't promise that we will, but what we will do is always get back to you with an answer, one way or the other. So we might have to defer some questions. As I mentioned in the chat, please go ahead and raise your hand, as Elena mentioned, if you have a question, or put it in the chat. A little bit about conduit government relations. We, as Elena said, we came on and had been working with her and the city. And thank you, Paul and Jim, for coming on, and Monica and Betty and Dave and others of the city. It's amazing the commitment that Elena and the city CNC has for this program. We're very proud to just be a small part of it. We're going to play our role in the effort. Apologies for that. But they have really shown the leadership to move this forward. There's not a lot of these type of programs around the country. There's a few, but there's not a lot. And as you all know, as Elena mentioned, the traditional nonprofit, well, in terms of my knowledge as well, you may differ, but is looking at projects and programs, right? You're trying to get money to implement, to provide more food, to provide more daycare, or transportation service, whatever it may be. This is more for you as an organization who have been hit hard by the pandemic and the many challenges to try to keep operating and moving forward. So we're very grateful to be a part of it. We have it was 4 of us at Conduit Government Relations: myself, Scott Carter, Alex Rodriguez, who's unable to join us this morning, Will Thomas, and Gina Davis. We all have over, not individually, that'd be a little bit rough, but well over 50 years working on analyzing, writing, implementing federal programs, grants, contracts, kind of the whole ball of wax. I've recently retired from the federal government after 30 years. Alex has run his own firm working at the state and local level on these issues for over 30 years. And Will and Gina have over 15 years experience themselves working on these issues. And so, again, we hope to bring our expertise to the issue. Our role, real quick, is going to be to provide technical assistance, number one, what we're doing today. We had a wonderful session yesterday. We had 40 plus individuals who were on that call. A lot of good questions, a lot of good back and forth. And so we hope to have that again today, and remind you, any question is a good question. Please ask, and we'll comments. If you don't have a question, comments are welcome. We're still working a bit on the application process, so that is still going to be moving forward, and we'll talk a little bit about that in a second. So our role is going to be to review the applications, work with you to answer questions, clarify issues on your application, help you with identifying correct documentation, things of this nature. We can only go so far because we will be reviewing the applications and providing funding recommendations to the city. So our technical assistance will be pretty much right up to the point where we'll say, okay, hopefully you have it, and go ahead and submit your application. So we'll be with you most of the way, but at the end, it's going to be you all who are moving forward and applying or not applying. As I mentioned, we're going to provide technical assistance during that process. And just as Elena had mentioned, we have been, working really hard on this program with CNC and the city. And so we're hoping to get the process moving. Again, thank you for your time, and any questions you have about as we move forward, raise your hand and move on. You don't have to wait till the end. So next slide, please, and we'll talk about the application process. The fund's expected to open in February. We're working real hard to do that. And the application period to apply is going to be for 60 days. So it'll be a 60-day time period once it opens. The funds must be obligated, meaning they must be, designated, agreed upon, moving out the door by December 31, 2024. That aligns with the eligibility period, which we will talk about in a little bit. That is between March 3, 2021 and December 31, 2024. That's the time period of the actions that you're eligible to receive funds. And so decisions on the applications will be done immediately, right away. So as soon as you finish your application and submit it as complete, the conduit team will move in right away, grab your application, and begin reviewing it immediately. If we have questions, we will get with you on those questions. We'll be able to provide comments to you on those and be available to you as we move forward. Once those reviews are complete, we will provide a recommendation to the city, excuse me, and then they will identify, make the final funding decisions and allocate those funds. As I note at the end, all funds must be expended, meaning spent out the door by December 31, 2026. So we have to obligate by 2024, and the funds must be spent by 2026. Real quick on some of the roles that we've covered a little bit already. CNC, obviously today doing a great job in the outreach and advocacy, getting everybody around to make sure they know about it. We ask again that you do the same. Your colleagues, I'd say many of them were on yesterday, but we know there are others who may not have made it. So please spread the word, spread the word, spread the word. Conduit, as I mentioned, our role will be providing technical assistance and review and recommendations. And the city will be, again, the final funding decisions and sending checks and allocating those funds as well. So that's kind of the process is moving forward. Like I said, we're still tweaking the application a little bit. So your comments are welcome today on anything that that you may have challenges that if you're familiar with any of the application processes or anything, please let us know so we can make that as good as possible. And again, we have Paul and Jim from the city who are on, next slide, Elena, who are on that we'll hear as well, and we're working with them. So basic eligibility documentation, including IRS determination letter to verify that you are a 501(c)(3), 501(c)(19), all the other COVID-19 loans, grants received, and the reason why and the dollar amount. Let me just clear right here. The main point here is not that you received a grant from a former ARPA or CARES Act or other funding. It's what you received it for. So you may have received dollars to, again, as I mentioned before, run a project. You're providing funds for daycare, for transportation, for food, whatever it may be. That is not what that's not what this grant program is for. This grant program is for you as an organization to recover from losses you received, fundraisers being canceled, other actions, that occurred in the eligibility time period that you can apply to quote, make yourself whole and or increased operating costs, even as you look into the future as well. So that's what this is for. So want to make sure that we're clear on that. And we want to make sure that, we know if you've applied, we don't want to duplicate, right? We don't want to duplicate funds to you. That will get us all in a little bit of a trouble with the feds and others. So that's the reason we're asking for that. So in the application, we will list those funds and the dates that they were out to remind you of them. And if there's any questions on those, like I said, let us know, and we'll be going over that with you as well. We will need, to be clear, a federal UEI. For those not familiar with that, it is a brand new number. It used to be the DUNS number, the DUNS number. So it is required to have a UEI to receive federal funds. If you do not have one, we certainly can help you go through that process. It's pretty simple. I have the website down here at sam.gov. So if you don't have it yet during the application, simply let us know when you applied for it. It doesn't take a long time. It's not real difficult, I'll be honest with you. But that you're going to need that as well. And again, I'll answer any questions on that as we move forward. And then any documentation that is, again, going to verify your revenue decrease, operating expense increase, incurring beginning March 3, 2021 and December 31, 2024. So those are a little bit of the basic eligibility items there as well. Go ahead and next slide. And I see a question.
Yeah, so I was just going to say, Scott, there are 2 questions in the chat.
Yes, real quick, Ruben, I can answer that right away. Yes, that's the goal, to get it out in February. You betcha. Uh, Natalia, let's chat because I'm going to read into this a little bit. I'm assuming it sounds like you're serving 400 kids. You need more funds, so it sounds like you might have increased operating costs, expenses due to this. So let's we'll get with you offline like we've done with some others to answer that specifically. But yes, it looks like you certainly could be eligible. But again, we'll have to dig a little more there just to be sure. Okay, because again, it's for future, increased operating costs as well within the eligible time period, and it looks like you certainly might be in that range. Okay, so we'll get back to that, or we'll get with you offline on that as well. Documentation to to demonstrate a loss. Doesn't one of the things that's interesting, the final rule in the overview says the documentation does not have to be, quote, audited. However, it must be accurate and verifiable and clear. And so again, this is going to be one of those where we're expecting to work closely with many of you on what documentation to provide. We've already had many questions on this. We've worked with some folks to look at some documents. We have some examples that we've created and utilized. Calendar fiscal, can it be? Lima, yes, is the answer to your question, I believe. And we'll just get back to there as well. So it's going to be, again, the documentation. So you're going to need to show a previous loss, be it a P&L statement, statement of position, potential projected loss, meaning the situation earlier, you are going to have increased costs due to COVID. Maybe increased costs for labor, increased costs for rent now. You had costs to provide iPads to staff, to these types of things is what you want to show. And again, looking at a loss and looking at the budget moving forward for increased costs. Reminder, the budget must be that you utilize to show projected increased cost. It has to be approved by your organization's budget. So it needs to be a approved budget. I mentioned operational invoices, bills, things of that nature. As you increase costs, we'll need documentation there and working with you. Staffing costs, payroll, proof of payment, those issues. And then obviously a decrease in revenue, canceled fundraising and or closure, or other activities that cause you to have a decrease in revenue. So those are examples, some of the basic things you're going to need as we move forward. How they're formatted and how they look may differ from each of you, and that's okay, as long as the information is accurate and verifiable. That is going to be the key here. I will say this, the final rule does provide a good bit of flexibility in this area because it assumes loss. It recognizes that you'll have future increased costs. So it's going to allow us a good bit of flexibility, and we're looking to utilize that flexibility with each of you and each applicant as they move forward. So I know you're going to have more questions on this, and again, we'll be able to get with you as we move here in a minute with questions, and of course afterwards. So next slide, real quick. This is just an example. Again, it's just a statement of cash flow with just a bunch of numbers on it that can be used to show budget expectations, loss, revenue, expenses. It's a line item. You can see we're going to have this as well available to you with other examples, in addition to 4 other source documents, which will be the final rule, the overview of the final rule by the Department of Treasury. You'll have the Department of Treasury frequently asked questions, and also frequently asked questions that we have been putting together. In addition, you'll have a little overview memo from the Nonprofit Council, National Nonprofit Council, that gives a little information about eligibility and examples as well. So we want to encourage you to go utilize those documents, read through them. They have examples of documentation and other ways for uses, eligibility of funds. And And so want to make sure you're aware of that as well. Go ahead. Next slide, please, is going to be a similar, nope, backward. Yep. Again, you can also present, as we mentioned, the actuals in current and future budgets, highlighting losses as well. An increased cost, what have you. So again, basic. This is just a document we took and scrolled out. And so go ahead and go to the next slide. We'll have these available to you and can walk, and make sure that yours are understandable as well, and that they make sense. They're eligible. They're within the rule, because the one thing that we all want to clear and have committed is making sure, we do this correctly, that we protect you. In terms of you are getting the funds that you're eligible for. So there's no determination down the road that you weren't eligible and have to pay those back. So that was a bit quick. My apologies for that. Again, thank you for some of the questions in the chat. Lima, just real quick again, what calendar year, fiscal year can it be for? Can it be as early as current year fiscal or projected out 2024? Yes, it can be, again, the time frame. Your activity, your loss or projected increase in costs need to be within March 3, 2021, December 31, 2024. So that's the time frame. And again, it can be a little confusing, but I hope that answers that question. And again, we're going to have answers to these questions as well, and provide those, as Elena said, on the website as well. Real quick.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Alice has her hand up, and then
Alice,
Ruben's
please.
Question in the chat. So Alice, go ahead.
We have several programs. Two of the programs have gotten increased funding, and one program has had a loss. Is that eligible, or if the overall situation is gain money, are we not eligible?
That's a great question, Alice. I want to dive in more of that rather than give you one right now, because I tend to want to say yes, but I want to be sure.
Thank you.
I just want to be sure. So we have that down. It's recorded. So team, let's just make sure that overall versus individual. Because Alice, you said you have two different programs, correct? That you operate.
We have
one,
three.
Yeah, three. Okay. And one you received a pretty good bump, and other you went down, and so you're concerned about the overall.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
No, you're welcome. Ruben, let me read. Because the range of what can be allocated is up to 150,000, how will the amount awarded for successful candidates be determined? That will be, thank you, Ruben, for the question. We at Conduit are going to review the applications and your documentation. If you request 20, 15, 75, whatever your request is, Ruben, the documentation will have to justify that amount, and we will make that determination and recommendation, and then provide that to the city, and then they will stamp yes or come back to us and say not sure, Scott, and then we may have to adjust that dollar amount. So again, cannot guarantee that the dollar amount you request you will receive the whole amount. You may not. It will all depend on if the documentation you provide is within the time period and for eligible use. And we'll do that based on the final rule, which Treasury put out, and in consultation with the city as well. But Ruben, we're providing a recommendation to the city on the dollar amount based on your app, and then they will make that final decision.
The only other thing I just want to add is that it also depends on how many people apply and how much money is available. I think if your application can demonstrate us in that amount, and there's enough money for everyone to get everything they've asked for, then everyone will get everything they asked for. If not, we'll have to make some adjustments. But that's really what the process is going to be.
Correct. Thanks, Elena, for that. And let me just add as well, Elena and her team, because of their relationship with many of the nonprofits in their role, they will not have a hand in evaluating the proposals. That will be a conduit role only with the city. So there is some information at the end that Elena does want to have and be able to see, and it's just to help to identify who's applying and to make sure we were reaching the folks that we wanted to reach as well. So I wanted to make clear that this is a conduit city decision moving forward, ultimately city, and that Elena and her team will not have a role there.
And Gerald, I apologize if I'm not saying your name correctly. Unmute yourself.
That's good. Thank you so much. This is Dr. Gabo with IFSI, the Immigrant Family Services Institute. In our case, we have seen and we have been working with an influx of new migrants who have been coming, which really push us to work throughout the states. And then we have families all across in, Brockton, Cambridge, Everett, and so on and so forth. So in our case, it's more about building capacity to serve more families. So I was just wondering whether or not this would be an acceptable request to put.
It sounds like you are going to have quite a bit of increase in cost because of the increase in your services to the migrant community.
Yes.
My gut says yes, and but again, I would encourage you to begin to anticipate to apply. But we may need to go ahead and have a discussion just to make sure that you're good. I want to make sure you have the information, but I would say yes. It sounds like you're going to have increased operating costs within the time period. The only thing I would want to clarify as well, you're located in Cambridge, correct? Proper?
Our main office is in Mattapan. However, we work with different partner organizations all across, including Cambridge.
Okay, we'll have to check, because I think we were looking. We'll have to check that, because I think one of the basic eligibilities that you had to be located in Cambridge and serve Cambridge residents. But let's double check that.
Okay.
I think that's what we're looking at, but I don't want to tell anybody no right out of the gate. But I think it may be a challenge there. But we'll talk if you don't mind.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you. Excellent questions. Lori, fiscally sponsored by an organization outside of Cambridge, but you are in Cambridge, correct? So you're in Cambridge, but your financial sponsor is outside. Ooh, I think so, yes. But let me double check, but I think so, yes. Because it's a fiscal sponsor. You're located there, they're there. So I think that's going to be acceptable. And let me just say this as well. I want everybody to begin to be. I'm trying not to. Let me apologize. I'm trying not to give a yes or no or any definitives, because I really want to double check and make sure. But I also want to make sure and remind folks. I want everybody to have the mindset that you're going to apply, because I believe you're all probably eligible. You're going to have you'll have more questions, but get in the mindset that I believe you're going to apply. I also want to be clear as well. We've heard some thoughts about, well, I'm not sure it was due to COVID or the loss, what have you. The rule assumes that if you had an impact, an economic impact within the eligible time period, it's due to COVID. Okay, so I want to make sure that everybody understands that it is assumed by the rule and by Treasury that if you had a negative economic impact within the time frame, that it was due to COVID. So I just want to clarify that and say that because there's been some questions about whether it's COVID or not. If it's within that time frame, you should assume that it's due to COVID.
The only thing I would add to, and sort of like building on Scott's point about sort of, encouraging you all to seriously consider applying. We worked very hard to get this money available. And we really want to see it go out into the community, supporting organizations. And the framing here is that we're going to be trying very hard to find ways to say yes, rather than looking for reasons to say no. So please know that,
Yes.
and really think about okay, how can I make this work? Because it really is quite flexible, because it can be either previous losses or projected losses. So if you see in your current year or even another year out coming down the pike, your expenses are going up and you don't think you're going to be able to raise enough money to meet them, that can count, as long as you have documentation that backs that up. All right, there is a question in the chat. When the application becomes available, will that be communicated by CNC and/or Scott's team? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
When it becomes available, you're gonna wish that you're not hearing as much from us as you probably will be.
Yeah.
We will be shouting from every corner, utilizing every communications channel we have, every angle we can think of to make sure everybody knows about this.
Absolutely.
Probably including some of you, asking you to also, use your megaphones and bullhorns to get the message out.
Yep. Let me real quick. Thank you, Elena, very much. And Lori's question up there before. Yeah, Lori, it sounds like, again, just at the glance, right? It sounds like you said we didn't earn more. Sounds like there was a revenue loss of some sort there. Yes, that at first glance, it looks like, yes, it could definitely be considered a loss, because it's a revenue you had planned and it did not come through during that time period of COVID. So we'll dig in a little more there, but at first glance, yes.
Marika, go
I have a
ahead.
question. So this is about physically what the grant application is going to look like. Is it a government website that you're going to have to submit this through? Because those can be a little cumbersome.
Yeah.
But will we be able to print out all the instructions ahead of time with all the questions and everything clearly what we're going to need before we even sit down and get started?
It will, yes. We'll give you two things. Number one, Marika, thank you for your question. Yes, it'll be on a portal. The city, as you may have seen in the past, the city, when they ran the small business loans, grants, if you will, where you went on the city portal and applied, that's what we're planning on doing. We're working very closely with Paul and Jim to make that as smooth as possible. We've already had some tweaks we've had to make in terms of ability to save, attachments, some things of that nature. So yes, that's still going to be the process. Okay, so that's how it's going to work. We will have as much example documentation and information for you ahead of time. As you get into the application, you'll know what we're asking for. So you'll be able to also go through the application and save and not submit. Okay, Marika, so you can do that as well. So we're going to provide you as much information on examples of documentation, eligibility as possible. Secondly, you'll be able to go ahead and move through the application, take a look at it. If you have questions before you jump in, you can go ahead and ask us, or you can move so far and save and stop and ask us as well. Again, we'll be available to you. So, and as Elena said, I'm going to give a shout out to Paul and Jim who are on here. I went into the system, worked with it. I'm not good at that. Just let you know, I'm not the biggest whiz, but once I learn it, I'm pretty good. It's very simple. It seems to be quite simple. And then there's a smart sheet, other information as well that we can track. So I think you're all going to be happy with it. We hope, and make it as easy as possible. So great questions, Marika. Appreciate it. I see a question in the chat. Let me scroll up a little bit. I see from far on Gregory came a late. Heather, hang on a sec. Heather, let me go ahead and start with Heather and scroll down. If nobody's hands raised, have you discussed with what reporting and will invoice be monthly quarterly? Heather, reporting will be very limited because you all will be beneficiaries. So it'll be very limited in your reporting. You're not a sub-recipient or anything that would cause much larger reporting. Invoicing, we're expecting, depending on, how do I want to answer this? It could be 1 or 2 payments potentially. And we're still looking at that. And what I mean by that is, if you simply have an economic loss that you are applying, you have no future increase operating cost or monies that or actions that you may need to take, hiring or other in the future, more than likely you will get 1 payment. If you have future cost and loss, we're still discussing with the city whether we go ahead and provide the payment for both or provide 2 payments, 1 for the loss immediately and then the future one as you need to go ahead and take the activity. The funds will be obligated for both, however. So if you're approved for both, okay, Heather, you're approved for both, the money will be obligated. So it'll be sitting there waiting to be sent to you. So it's not going to be like, oh, I'm going to lose it. It will be obligated. And then when you're ready to disperse it, we will send it to you and let you take that action. So we're still working on that a little bit. Reporting twice a year. Again, it's going to depend, probably just once, depending on what you have to do. It'll be pretty simple. We're trying to make sure that we leave the reporting as simple as possible. It should only be 1. Just letting us know that, yep, you have it and you spent it. And we will have that as well, though, right? According to Marika's comments, we'll have the reporting requirements as well as you move forward. The Cambridge, Greg, I think we're going to have to look at that a little bit per the question earlier as well in terms of location exactly in Cambridge or who it serves. So let us just clarify that to be sure. Farhana, first glance, yes, it does. It does look like there'd be something you would be eligible for, because it sounds like once again you're going to have quite an increase in costs, and so yes, let's expect to apply and let's find time to meet and discuss. The good thing is that and why I keep saying that, and I mean, we will make time. In addition, we're going to have an email available to you. It'll be a general email like cambridge@grants.gov. Conduit team will have access to that, and we will get the email immediately as soon as you send it. So we will be available to you. And when we say we'll meet you offline, we certainly will meet you offline. And I don't mean that offline, not official. I mean, but just away from the group and sit down and kind of go a little more over your questions. We are happy to do that. So when I say we'll follow up with you, Farhana and others, we absolutely will do that. And we'll provide our email access directly to us in the interim. Yes, Tracy Lee, that will be us. We will be providing you support with complications. You betcha. You betcha. And any other questions that you have? Yes, Nicola, the recording, Nicola, the recording will be available. Elena will be posting that, right, Elena, on the CNC website, correct?
Correct.
Good questions. Great questions.
Any other questions?
Great questions.
Because
Any
as alluded to, the application is mostly done, but now really is the time to raise questions, because this is we're sort of in that last leg before, everything's finalized, approved by the city's law department, and then it opens, right? And so we want to make sure that we've really thought about all of these questions, all of these nuances, and the more things you raise in these spaces, the more aware we are. All right, Alice, go ahead.
How do we document future increases that we project?
Not hopefully, Alice, but hopefully you would have something identifying, for example, if it's a utility, it's a notice that your costs are now going to go up. I'm in Maine, and the CMP is going to boost our electricity rates by 21%. So if there's a notification of an increased cost, say you're providing transportation, and now your costs for transportation are clearly that's a major issue. Now they certainly probably have increased from, just by the gas prices. So something that shows, our transportation cost this year was X, last year was Y, and look at the difference. So it's those notices that you have, documentations that you have to show that you've had an increase. And again, we can go through that to make sure it is accurate and verifiable, and everybody's okay moving forward with it. But it would be those types of documents, Alice, that shows that you have something that shows you're now having an increased cost. Again, be it for operating, whatever it may be.
The cost of living went up 7%, and we're thinking of adjusting the wages comparably. Would that count?
Yes, I believe so. But again, I want to look into it. The issue of the premium pay, because there's issues of that as well as premium pay and some other activities. So I'd like to talk to you a little bit if you want to do that, because there is the issue of premium pay that I'd like to dig in a little bit to make sure exactly what you're looking to ask for, because you're adjusting wages based on the cost of living. I got it. But I want to see how you want to do that, because there is the issue of eligibility for premium pay on top of what you were going to pay. I think it's $13 additional an hour potentially. So let's dig in a little more on that, Alice, if you don't mind.
Thank you so much.
I imagine
You're
that,
welcome.
Scott, that's going to be a substantial issue, because I think for a lot of organizations, that's where their increased costs are really coming from.
Absolutely.
Because
Oh,
of
yeah.
the tight labor market, organizations are really struggling to compete. And so they're raising wages probably outside of their comfort zone, because they want to make sure they keep really good people.
Absolutely.
So we'll definitely need to look into that. And Gregory has a question in the chat.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, they will be eligible. We'll just have to double again. I just want to make sure how you want to, again, there's the issue of premium pay, there's the issue of benefits, there's other activities there. So yeah, we certainly will. Yes, Marika, I hope I pronounced your name right, but yes, we certainly will. That'll be part of the FAQ that we'll put out. Greg came in late. Release of the application. It's going to be an application. It's going to be web-based it's a portal via the city. We're expecting to open the applications in February, and the application will be open for 60 days. And the applicable time period for losses, if the eligibility time period for loss activity is March 3, 2021, December 31, 2024. So I hope that answers your question. And again, we will have, as I mentioned before, source documents available to you for each of you to take some time to take a look at. That is the final rule, an overview of the final rule. As I look here now, for example, impacted nonprofits, eligible money, challenges covering payroll, rent, mortgage, or other operating costs. So there's a lot of flexibility here. And as Elena mentioned, we are going to work very hard to make it as easy as possible and as flexible as possible, and to make sure everybody gets as much as they need to keep working. Mm-hmm.
Alice, do you have another question? Your hand is raised.
Yep. Alice, maybe she didn't put it down last time, but Alice had good questions.
Okay, Alice, Alice, I'm going to assume your hand is up by accident. So I'm going to lower your hand, and Sharon has a question in the chat.
Oh, Sharon, we'll double check that. So your question is, when the application period opens, if you go in and you click, when you certify that that's it, I'm submitting, but then you realize, I have more to put in, but it's not to the deadline. Can you edit your application? I'm understanding that's a question.
No, actually.
No,
sorry.
okay, clarify, Sharon. Thank you.
So I submitted the beta, application as a test a number of weeks ago. And when I went back in, you had asked me to look something up, and when I went back in to the application, I couldn't access it because it was like already submitted in the portal. So my question is, after the information sessions and as things change, if I want to go back into my original application, which I submitted as the beta test, and make changes before the deadline, how will I be able to do that? Because as of now, I can't do that.
We will work with Paul and Jim to be able to find a way to have you do that, Sharon, because we don't.
Scott, I can take that one if you want.
Paul,
So
please.
This is
Thank
Paul
you.
from City of Cambridge. So with the portal, once you submit an application, you'll be able to review it again. You'll be able to add comments and upload new attachments. You can't make edits to the form data that you've submitted, but an employee can. So if you say, I made a mistake on this, I need to update this field, an employee can go and update that. So the finance department, which will be managing the applications, can make those edits. In terms of accessing your test application, we can look into the specific one. It may have been because it was a test application and we're moving so many things around, it may have been not associated with you anymore as we were putting it through its paces, testing the system. But when this is live and available for everyone, you would just log in using your email into the system, and you have a dashboard where you'd see your application. And we'll make sure that your test application will be available as well. So we'll just make sure it's reassociated with your account.
Okay, so I was initially under the impression that the test application could become the real application easily with just some edits once my feedback about the portal was incorporated into the new and updated in portal. So like it sounds like you're saying I might have to.
No, you don't have to redo anything, Sharon. You won't have to redo anything. You
Right.
can certainly take it, just move it forward.
And I think like we should take this sort of offline. I think we'll be able to solve it between
Okay.
Paul and Scott and you
Okay.
guys. In terms of the link for the application, so the application is not totally complete. What Sharon was referring to is we did ask some organizations to basically just test it out, see what's working, what's wonky, what doesn't make sense. And so that's what she's referring to. The application is not complete and the link is not live yet. As soon as it is live, we will absolutely be sharing the link, blasting it out everywhere we can. And you'll have 60 days from the date at which the portal and the application is live to complete the application.
Good question, Sharon. Appreciate it, because it's important in terms of the ability to go in. I know how it can be when you go in and do an application. Once you hit, I hit send, and then you're not too sure, and you'll be able to save and that nature. So Paul, thank you for answering that question.
Okay, I'm gonna do one last call for questions before we close. So does anyone have any last questions to ask or just any comments to share? Okie dokie. Well, Thank you, everybody, for coming. Please note that as soon as I end this session and end the meeting,